Good evening and welcome back to Sportszone. I'm your host, Mackenzie Freeman, and the UNT Mean Green got back in the win column this weekend as they took the win over Wyoming 44-17. And here to recap the game with me is Samuel Craig and Kenny Johnson. Guys, great win for the Mean Green, somewhat of a get-back game. But let's go ahead and talk about Chandler Morris. He's been topic of discussion, obviously against Texas Tech. Didn't have the greatest performance, but what would y'all say, he did well, he did bad in the game against Wyoming?
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely made better decisions than he did these past two games where we've seen kind of a weird slump from him where he's thrown all of his interceptions. But how can you not make better decisions when you're going against a team like Wyoming, one of the worst teams in college football right now? Anything less than that, and I would have been really worried for the future of our offense.
Mm-hmm. And Kenny?
Well, I would say that was one of his most cleanest games by far. He completed 68% of his passes with 2 touchdowns. And finally, like you said, 0 interceptions. We could thank God for that. But he also contributed on the ground with 22 yards. So I loved how he used his legs and used his mobility to escape the pocket. So if he can play like how he played against Wyoming, the sky's the limit.
Right, and coming up next week, we have Tulsa, and then I believe it's FAU. And then we get into our 2 hard games, Memphis and Tulane, those 2 games back-to-back. Guys, how important was it for the Mean Green to start this season 3-1 instead of 2-2? It
was massive, and I think especially starting with Wyoming, before we go into conference play, I'm treating this as a tune-up game. This is going to get our boys' confidence up going into this really important AAC play. And like you said, Memphis and Tulsa just a few weeks away. Those are going to be difficult games. But looking last year, almost every single conference game that we lost, it was by, under 10 points. So we have a similar team as we did last year. I think we can start winning some of those games.
Right. And Kenny, your thoughts?
Well, me personally, first, starting off 3-1 is always a great start. We can always say that is always a confidence booster. However, there are tough teams in the conference. Of course, you got Army. Of course, though Tulane is like 2-2. I mean, Tulane still went 11-3 last season and went 8-1 with conference play. So then you also have UTSA and Memphis they always find a way to sneak into a bowl game. But if they can play the way they played against Wyoming, I personally believe they can make a conference championship.
And then heading into those Memphis and Tulane game, how do you guys think the Mean Green match up against Tulsa? Do you see us going into those games back-to-back 4-1 or 3-2? Sam?
I definitely see us beating Tulsa. I know they have that depth, they have that running game, but I really do like our odds against them. I think our passing attack has been really good. I think our running back by committee is getting better. And I think our offense and maybe even our defense can start to shine.
And Kenny?
Most definitely. I'm really excited for our passing offense, really, because our passing offense, we actually average 326 yards per game, which is 9th in the country. So, if Morris can get the ball out fast, he got guys like Ward, Sheffield, Young, Carnes. I'm excited for this pass offense. Of course, losing Ragsdale and also losing, our other guy, it really does hurt. But I really love seeing, Shane Porter, Mackenzie McGill. And, I really love seeing them implement those guys. So if we can still keep like that, I think the sky's the limit.
And I'm glad that you guys both brought up the run game because you looked 2 weeks ago, Ragsdale, he's in and out due to injury, and then obviously Price with his big leg injury. How do you think this running game is going to look as the season goes on?
Yeah, like I had mentioned, we're going by that running back by committee look where what I really like is we're starting to incorporate those freshmen that we have on the team. McGill, Sibley, and especially McGill, who had 3 touchdowns against Wyoming. Half of all of his carries were touchdowns. So I think if we continue using these freshmen, it's not only going to be good for this season, it's going to be an outlook of how our future is going to look.
And Kenny?
Most definitely. To piggyback off that, I really did love McGill, and I loved how they really used Porter. Porter really went off, and I was not expecting that whatsoever. But I really enjoyed that, and also would help because people don't realize Chandler Morris is actually a dual threat quarterback. He actually can move. So I feel like if they can do more, QB powers, more draws, and all that, and read options, I think they can open up this run game.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that in each of the games we've played so far, there's been a different person on our offense that has their game, so to speak. Do you think we'll see that in every conference game where we just have, a random guy who we didn't expect pop off?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair thing to say, especially if we're going by, like I said, that running back by committee. Some guys always going to be a little better than the other ones. So, I mean, we saw, McGill and Porter really stand out, and I think maybe we'll see Sibley really stand out next game.
And Kenny?
I agree, honestly. Porter, McGill, then you also forgot Harris. DeMaja Harris went off against SFA. So I know he came back. I know he's having an injury, but if he's able to come back, I feel like each one offers different elements. So I'm excited for it personally.
Yeah, at the beginning of the season, it almost seemed like UNT had a lot of concern because they brought in, I believe the number was 74 new guys. And as a fan, that does concern me. But looking at our offense now, I think it's safe to say that there's some hope in this offense. What do you think, Kenny? I
agree. Like I said, I'm excited, and really just with everybody. Like I was telling my partner over here, if players are able to buy into a system, regardless, new guys or not, you have to buy into the system. And when you buy into the system, that's where you're able to have development. You're able to, of course, use freshmen that, of course, they might not be, as hands-on with the playbook, but, when they buy in, you can have, freshmen produce just like McGill.
Yeah, and we're in a new age of college football. It's undeniable. Transfer portal kind of is becoming king, especially in this age of NIL. So it's going to be really interesting how much the transfer portal is going to continue to affect us.
Right, and getting more to the defensive side of the ball, yes, we're 3-1, but you allow Stephen F. Austin to have a really good offensive game against you. You allow Wyoming, who's bottom 25 team, as you mentioned, Sam, to score 17 points on you. How do you think our defense is going to look as the season continues on?
Well, first of all, Wyoming did get a kick return touchdown, so we got to put some respect on our defense. They did only allow 10, but I mean, still, it's Wyoming. But what I really liked is how they approached this Wyoming game. They came out in a base 3-4, which is different than what they usually run. They run that 3-3-5. And like we were talking about earlier, they really need to get pressure to that quarterback. I think we saw Wyoming had a little too much time for my liking. So, I think if we continue to keep those offensives guessing in AAC play, I mean, we could definitely be pushing for a conference championship.
Most definitely. And, with UNT, out of 134 FBS teams, we are literally 124 when it comes to pass defense. We give up an average of 320 yards per game for pass.
Right.
And we're bottom 10 in takeaways and 93rd in sacks. So if the quarterback has 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, I mean, you could just relax. He could drink a glass of tea for all we care back there. So I feel like if we're able to dial pressures, get an effective pass rush, make him uncomfortable. And I feel like that'll make it easier for our DBs, to pick off passes, get fumbles. Like, I just wish they could just find ways to dial up more pressure, make them uncomfortable.
Right, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. Is there any player specifically that you would like to see more out of on the defensive side of the ball?
So I remember it was number 9 for UNT, and I can't remember his name, but I just remember I just liked his get off. Like, he was playing edge, and I just liked his swing moves, his rush. Like, I feel like if he's really able to develop that, I really just love the way he moves, and I love how he has a high motor. I see the motor really in all the defensive guys. It's like I said earlier, just buying into the system.
And Sam, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think it's kind of an interesting point that he can't name a name, and I'm struggling to think of names on our defense. We don't really have that many big guys on defense that are going out there. You can rely on them. They will get the pressure. And I think that's kind of what we're lacking. And I like to see that in the future. Maybe we go after, this guy's going to get the sack. This guy's going to get the pressure. We have these big names, but I'm struggling to think of any.
Right. And the UNT Mean Green may have beat up on the Cowboys, but when we come back, we'll talk a Cowboys team that did lose this past weekend.
I'm here to rescue you.
Oh, my prince.
No so fast.
This story is going to be awesome.
Did you know you have access to video equipment like DVDs, video games, and cameras? That's right, you do. Come on down to Chilton Library and fulfill your media dream. Located on the bottom floor next to the student sculpture. Hope to see you there soon.
Hey girl, you know you look good. I like the way you move and groove. I'm not sure.
Ugh, a 20-minute walk? I don't want to do this right now.
Don't worry, you can just use Transit.
Transit? What's that?
Transit is a mobile app that provides real-time tracking to connect buses, UNT shuttles, and even A trains. Simply download the app, then tap on the search bar and type where you want to go. In a matter of seconds, you get results for all available routes. And the best part of it is, it's completely free for UNT students. What are you doing?
I'm downloading it right now.
Download Transit today and remember, make life better without a car.
Welcome back to Sportszone. This weekend, the Cowboys, despite a fourth quarter comeback, fell by 3 to the Baltimore Ravens. And here to talk about the game with me is Alexander Salazar and Oscar Chavez. Guys, as I mentioned, fourth quarter comeback by the Cowboys. What did you think about the offense in the fourth quarter, Oscar?
Oh man, that fourth quarter, it was really when the offense really came alive. Dak started putting up points, and that's the thing with Dak. You know, they say that he just stats pads, but he was really into the game. He made it a 3-point game, and if we just made those conversions, hey, it would have come out with a dub out of there.
Alexander, your thoughts?
It was a mirage. The offense really shouldn't have even been in that position to get even close to the win. The score, 28-25, yeah, it's kind of misleading because in that fourth quarter, on the Cowboys' second to last drive, the Ravens gave them so many penalties. At least, I remember at least 3 that kept that drive going to get the Cowboys within the position to even get kind of close. So yeah, I really don't think that the offense was good the entire game. And that last drive, very misleading and making people believe that this was a close game.
Right, and oftentimes the media wants to blame it on Dak, blame it on Dak, blame it on Dak. Let's talk about the Cowboys' defense. It's something that needs to be talked about. You know, you look back at last week, Derek Carr and Alvin Kamara, they beat us up. Then you go and you have the Ravens, you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, who I would say are the better duo. You know, why did the defense struggle so much against those duos, Oscar?
I think it goes back to, we have to realize what we have and what we don't have. And we don't have the biggest linebackers in the league. The average linebacker is 6'2", 240. Well, our average linebacker doesn't even sniff that. Our biggest linebacker is Damian Clark, who is exactly that profile, 6'3", 240. However, he does not do jack to nothing in the run game. And who are we going to look to see? Maybe Overshown, who's a converted safety? I just don't see it. They're young players, and they got to get it together.
Alexander, your thoughts?
Yeah, the question, how did the Cowboys defense strategize to stop Lamar Jackson? The answer is they didn't. They didn't. Coming into this game, we know what kind of offense the Ravens run. With Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, it's no secret that this team is going to run the ball. And the Cowboys struggled with the running game against the Saints with Alvin Kamara. You would have thought that they did some kind of play calling or some sort of strategy to stop the run in this game, but no. Lamar Jackson had 87 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Derrick Henry had 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. So no, it was a complete failure with when it comes to strategy for the Cowboys defense.
And Oscar, you mentioned how our linebackers aren't true linebackers. So how do you get around that in future games?
You know, what really scars me is that playoff game against the Packers when we had Marquise Bell running linebacker. And really, we bring in Mike Zimmer, who is this well-respected guy in coaching, and he just has been unable to fix it. Do you maybe look at Michael Parsons and bringing him inside when his role is a defensive end? He's really good at that, and he's really not good at being an inside linebacker. So I believe you just need to beef up that linebacker core. And they're really young guys. We got 2 rookies. Overshown, not really considered a rookie, but it's his first year playing. And we just drafted the guy out of Notre Dame. I can't pronounce his name, Laiufu. But he's playing good. His best thing is IQ. So if they get bigger and they just know more, it's gonna be better.
Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, like you said, this defense is just really small. Against both the Saints and the Ravens, their offensive lines just looked so much bigger than the Cowboys. In the first game, Kendricks and Overshone, those were really bright spots on the defense, but in these two games at home, you just have not heard their name called. And another name you haven't heard this season or last season was Mozzie Smith, the first-round pick out of Michigan. I just have not seen him, and he was brought into the Cowboys to shore up that run defense, and I just have not seen him perform this season or last season.
And let's get into this this offensive side of the ball. I know people want to blame it on Dak, but in terms of rush offense, you look at the last 3 games they've played, 51 rush yards against the Ravens, 68 rush yards against the Saints, and then 102 yards versus the Browns. But it was the Browns, so, that best game of the season right there. How do we use our running backs to the best potential? Because right now the Cowboys stand 25th in the league in run offense.
I think it goes back to what I said earlier. You got to look at what you have and what you don't. What you brought in the offseason, which the Cowboys didn't bring a lot of. But as what they did, they brought back Zeke, and they tried incorporating Rico Dowdle a little bit more. I don't see it in Deuce Vaughn. I just don't. You're giving him plays up the middle, something that he's not the strongest in. Bounce it off. I think those are offensive run scheme problems that Mike McCarthy is probably still running since 2010 when he won that Super Bowl with the Packers.
And your thoughts?
Yeah, with their running back room, there's nothing you can really do to utilize this team. The running game has produced 221 yards this season. That's 29th in the NFL. And this week against the Ravens, they had to deal with Derrick Henry, who the Cowboys easily could have signed this offseason. But Jerry Jones, after that game, said that the Cowboys, quote, could not afford Derrick Henry, which I don't see how they could or how they couldn't. But yeah, this running back room, like you mentioned, Elliott, Dowdle, Vaughn, and Dalvin Cook, who's on the practice squad for the Cowboys, I just don't see how that is a stable running back room that can get you a lot of yards.
Right, and then when it comes to the rush defense, they also didn't perform great. 274 rush yards allowed versus the Ravens. With that being said, what is your confidence level in the defense headed forward?
My confidence has struck all the way down. In dry runs, I was predicting that the Cowboys were going to go 14-3. Well, that prediction has since changed. I don't really see us winning about 12 or 11 games. I see us fighting for 10 games behind the Eagles at a wild card spot. Eventually, my confidence is still going to be there in Dak to lead us in some games, but he's also going to pat his stats and just look good at the end of the season, maybe finish top 3 in voting.
Mm-hmm.
Quite honestly, and I want to preface this by saying I am a Dallas Cowboys fan. I think it would be a miracle if this team won 10 games. Their defense has been atrocious this season and last season. The past 3 home games for the Cowboys, so including that game against the Packers, 120 points given up, 40 points per game, 607 rushing yards, and 7.7 points per play. That is just unacceptable for any defense at any level of play.
And the Cowboys are facing off against the Giants next week. How do you guys think the Cowboys will line up against the Giants? I know the Giants aren't the best team, but, based off the last 2 weeks, what are your guys' thoughts?
Well, with my comments said earlier, I still believe we're going to smack the Giants. There's absolutely no way that we don't. Dak has been running the NFC East since he's joined. He's only ever lost to the Giants his rookie year, so I don't see him taking his first L since 2016 against them.
I would like to believe you, and I do believe that the Cowboys will win this game. He's made it a habit of owning the NFC East, so I do feel like the Cowboys will win this one, but I will say this game is going to be close.
Right, and in terms of Monday Night Football, we actually have 2 games tonight, unlike the usual one. First game, you've got the Jaguars at the Bills. Trevor Lawrence kind of having an off-putting season right now, 51 completion rate on the season so far. How will he do against a middle-of-the-road pass defense against the Bills?
So Trevor Lawrence, the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. I just don't see it. I haven't seen it since Clemson. And against this middle-of-the-road Bills defense, I don't really like to call him that because they've had guys come up. Christian Benford, he is a solid corner that has come in for the All-Pro Teron Johnson. And on the other side, you have a pick specialist in Rasul Douglas. So I believe they're going to be able to come in strong. They're definitely going to give them a run for their money. And I just see the Bills walking out pretty evenly.
Yeah, like you alluded to, Trevor Lawrence in his last 7 starts, 0-7. So that's obviously not something that the Jaguars want, but I do think that he's going to perform well in this game. The only thing that the Jaguars need to do, they just can't play from behind in this game. They need to have the lead in order for Trevor Lawrence to have a great game.
I definitely agree, and the Cowboys may have struggled 2 weeks in a row, but when we come back, we'll be talking about the Texas Rangers.
The do's and don'ts of the Pole Rec Center. See that man over there? Please do not hog weights. Instead, do this. Another important part is having an attentive spotter. See, here is an example of a non-attentive spotter. Instead, do this. Now we head to the track, which should be pretty easy, just it's important to pay attention to the way the track goes. Remember to wipe down the equipment after you're done using it. The towels are provided by the gym, so it's pretty easy to wipe down the equipment when you are done. Thank you for using the Pole Recreation Center.
Hey Alex, this guy on the internet says he wants to give me money.
That sounds suspicious.
What do you mean?
Typically, strangers who promise you money on the internet have their own best interest in mind. They often use bounce checks, which will disappear shortly after depositing, but not before they've asked for some money in return.
So he doesn't really want to spoil me?
No.
Well, then what should I do?
The best way to handle it is to block and report the suspicious message, or even consult local law enforcement if you've already fallen victim.
So I guess we aren't going to Key West for spring break.
No.
Welcome back to Sportszone. I'm your host, Mackenzie Freeman, and the Texas Rangers have been eliminated from the playoffs. Here to talk about their season with me, it's going to be Gabe Ife and Griffin Flack. Guys, this season, not so great. 74-82 on the seasons, and injuries have plagued them. But Gabe, overall, what's your thoughts on the transition from championship-winning team to how they played out this year?
I'd have to compare to the start of the Cowboys season. In one word, I'd say disappointing. It has not been great, to put it bluntly. You know, I would say there's been injuries, which I think, Griffin, you'll bring up a little bit, but a lot of it has also been underperformance. You look at guys last year, Adolis Garcia, everybody loves El Bombi. He took a major regression. You know, you hope that isn't a full-time, like a thing that's just the next step in his career. You hope he can bounce back. But you look at guys like Nathaniel Lowe, who I believe won the Silver Slugger last year. He did not hit like the way he needed it to. You look at a guy like Leody Taveras, who while last season wasn't great, he had a couple hot streaks that made it at least average, and he was significantly below average. You kind of combine a lot of your position players regressing. You look at Jonah Heim. He just didn't have a great year either, coming off a fantastic year the year before. And you combine that with the injuries we'll get into, and it just combines for a disappointing season.
Yeah, like you said, injuries really plagued the Rangers this season. Guys like Scherzer, DeGrom, it really took a hit to our pitching staff. Seager, it looked like he was dealing with some lingering injuries, and then he finally got shut down for the season. Also, like you said, the offense was very disappointing. Guys who stepped up in the playoffs last year really had underperforming seasons like Adolis Garcia. Marcus Semien he was an all-star, but he was pretty disappointing at the plate. And if you look at this, the Rangers were at the bottom half in almost every single offensive category: batting average, runs per game, hits per game, home runs, and OPS. So I would put a lot of the blame on injuries, which is a fair point. But next season, if they stay healthy, I feel like they'll be right back in the thick of things.
Well, you mentioned injuries to the pitching staff. A couple guys like Josh Spores, the dude who had the famous glove slam, the guy that everybody will know for history, he barely played this season.
Yeah.
And then you look at other dudes that really helped us out. Well, first of all, like Chapman's gone. He always gave heart scares. Leclerc was all right, but then you look at dudes like Latz and Brock Burke, who showed promise last year and who you thought coming into this year are going to help with the bullpen, did not help. Brock Burke was too busy punching the dugout wall, breaking his hand. Jake Latz just never showed any promise come out after last year. He just did terrible this year. And so you combine just underperforming bullpen, outside of Kirby Yates, David Robertson, they did pretty good, but pitching woes combined with injuries does not lead to success.
Right.
Speaking of that, I was just going to say, if you don't have pitching, it's going to be very hard to compete. I was just going to say, I really like what the Tigers have done this season with their Cy Young is going to be Tariq Skubal. If you don't have pitching, like the Rangers have Scherzer and DeGrom and Evaldi, and we're going to get into Kumar Rocker later. But I mean, if you don't have pitching, it's going to be very hard to compete. I just want to make that point.
And one of the injuries and one of the pitchers, he came back, DeGrom, he pitched Friday night against the Mariners. We didn't get the win, but do y'all agree with the decision to bring him back for the last stretch of games? And what did you think about his performance overall, Griffin?
I'm kind of mixed emotions on this. I kind of disagree with the decision to bring DeGrom back, but I do understand it. They weren't necessarily eliminated from the playoffs at the time, but they were most likely going to. So obviously Bruce Bochy isn't just going to throw in the white towel in the season. And DeGrom, when healthy, is one of the best pitchers, if not the best, in the whole league. And when you add a guy of that caliber back to the rotation, it boosts the whole team morale around them. So, I mean, I understand what Bruce Bochy was doing by making that decision. But, I mean, you could risk further injury.
Right. And Gabe?
I'll be honest, I disagree with that. I used to, but I've had a very big change of heart. The rehab process, it doesn't matter whether you're 72 and 84, whatever we are, I don't know, something bad, or if you're 90 and 72. Like, it doesn't matter if you're first place or your season's about to be done in a week, which ours is. It matters that you get healthy. One of the things I saw recently, I was looking at a couple articles talking about this, and it really helped change my mind, was you're going to go into the offseason, you need those innings. Your arm, you can't just take a break on the rehab process. And so whether that's on a big league mound, whether that was at Frisco, the best way to get live game reps is to be pitching in Arlington and all the other MLB cities. It's not to stay down in Frisco, kind of just going through the motions. It's to be getting those live game reps. So while he could get hurt, if he's fully healthy, there's no reason they should just shut him down, especially coming off of an injury.
Right, and Gabe, as you mentioned, the season ends in about a week. So looking ahead, are there any guys in the Rangers farm system that you're excited to be brought up? Any prospects, Gabe?
There's a couple. I'll start out with the obvious, Kumar Rocker.
Yeah.
Listen, he's just amazing. I really think you've seen his potential the past couple starts getting called up. He's had like 15 to 20 appearances since getting drafted with us, and he's been lights out. You would think that coming up to the majors, he would be a little rough. It honestly hasn't been that bad. Now, his last start against the Mariners, I believe, was only 3 or 4 innings. Wasn't as long. Now, he's still coming off of Tommy John, just like DeGrom, so they're going to limit his pitch count. But he's been absolutely dynamic. You look at a guy like Jack Leiter, who's finally, hopefully, starting to figure it out. It's taken him a while, coming off of the second pick overall. Yeah. We all thought he was going to just jump right in and just lead the rotation. But he's finally starting to figure it out. I think Bochy is keeping him in and just letting him figure out a situation. I think his start against the Yankees a couple weeks back was really encouraging. He got through 5. Yep. He had some struggles in the 6th, but I think he's really starting to come back. So you look at those two guys. Now, jump into a couple guys from the minors real quick. This guy named Emiliano Teodo. I watched him all the way back when he was in rookie ball. They had a college game in the fall against Tech. He throws like 101. He's absolutely dominating at the Frisco Rough Rider level. And then a guy named Alejandro Rosario is our number 3 prospect, and he got called up from Hickory, and he's been doing great in Frisco as well. So those are a couple other names.
Yeah, obviously the most obvious guy is Kumar Rocker. Right. He's got electric stuff. He throws upward 90 miles per hour. He's got a nasty slider from Vanderbilt, right, which is the top baseball program. So is Jack Leiter, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, Jack Leiter.
They were
yeah,
a duo
those
right
Vandy
there.
boys.
It was a dynamic duo.
I'm also looking at Sebastian Walcott, the 18-year-old shortstop. I would like to see him in maybe a couple years not necessarily take over for Seager, because Seager is still one of the best players in baseball, but Seager's he's 31 or so right now. And if Sebastian Walcott is able to fill in that shortstop void, Seager could have some DH days to be able to preserve him for playoff runs. And Malcolm Moore, the catcher who was just drafted in this past MLB draft, I would like to see him, get a couple of years of development to maybe take over for Jonah Heim, who has been pretty disappointing. Just kind of the Rangers story of the season. But I would like to see those three guys really develop and become a key part of the Rangers organization.
You look at a guy like Walcott, Corey Seager isn't going to stick at shortstop forever. You're already starting to see some miscues. And then you see all these injuries, the hernia injury. It's good that they're getting him off his feet and go into next season fully prepared. Hopefully gets a full offseason in. But I think it's just showing he's not sticking around forever at shortstop. They're going to have to move him to third. Like you said, move him to DH some. Just to where his bat, when he's healthy, is one of the best bats. Just like Shohei Ohtani.
One of the most
Shout out Shohei Ohtani. They have some of the best bats, both Dodgers.
I was going to say one of the most clutch players in the league, too. I mean, you really need that in the playoff time. 2 World Series MVPs. That's pretty good.
I was there game 1 in the World Series. Shout that out. Most electric home run Rangers.
You're like,
that's
my sports flex right there.
Yes, that's my sports flex. Yes, that is very true.
One of the common themes that we've discussed, even in our championship season, the Rangers pitching was not the best. You just had guys like Seager, Semien, El Bombi. Bats were hot. With guys like Corbin Burns, Blake Snell, and Max Fried available in free agency, do you think we should pick a guy up or turn to, our farm system?
I think we should pick a guy up. Now, do I think we're going to do that? I don't think so. Ray Davis has mentioned the TV deal makes it most likely that's not going to happen because of the uncertainty with Bally Sports. Now, do we need to re-sign a guy like Nathan Eovaldi? Yes. That is like mandatory for this team that continue to have success.
I don't think you could get rid of him.
I was going to say, you cannot get rid of him. You have guys like Kumar coming up, but you really need a guy like that to stay with us.
Right.
Yeah. I was going to say, I would love to see him pick up a really talented, powerful lefty. They don't have that left-handed pitcher in the rotation. Scherzer, it most likely isn't coming back, but you still got DeGrom. Kumar Rocker's going to be in the rotation next year. Eovaldi, hopefully they get him back. But I would like to see him go get like a Blake Snell or a Max Fried, who they're 2 really dominant lefty pitchers, which if you just have a rotation full of right-handed pitchers, it's not going to fare well because then the opposing team can just adjust to that and
Yeah.
Well, with the Rangers season coming to an end, that means the Star season is kicking things back up. So stay with us as we'll talk about some Dallas Stars hockey.
I'm so tired. I feel ugly. I'm not okay. I didn't know UNT had counseling services. Maybe I should check it out. This looks like the place.
Willis Library, located at the University of North Texas. It has computers, printers, and the building is open 24/7. By going online, you can book up to an hour of reserved space at one of the many private study rooms. Many of them are equipped with whiteboards, a table, and a TV to hook up to your computer. Textbooks can be checked out for free with a student ID. They also have many of these in ebook forms. This is still a library, so always remember to be quiet and respectful of other surroundings, especially in certain places where talking is not allowed. For example, the 3rd and 4th floor are completely quiet. As you can see, Willis Library has many options for students, with it offering many media sources and staying open all the time.
Good evening. Welcome back to Sportszone. The Dallas Stars kicked off their preseason last Friday, and here to talk about the Dallas Stars with me is Valentina Rojas-Schanefeld and Omar Najm. Guys, before we get into the preseason games, let's talk about some of the signings in the offseason. Most recent, they signed Thomas Harley to a 2-year contract last Tuesday. What are your guys' reactions to this?
I mean, I think it's amazing. He's a young prospect. He's 23 years old. He's what we need. I'm glad it's a 2-year contract because we don't have enough money right now to offer him anymore.
5-year,
yeah, and everything. And so I think in 2 years we're going to have more money. He's going to develop his skills more, and he's going to get more money than he deserves right now because I think he's going to, show a lot of things and bring the Stars what they need since we are having a lot of young talent and a lot of our veterans have retired. So he's a good asset, and I'm really happy that we got him.
And Omar?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's very important that the Stars keep building their youth core, and he's only 23 years old. So I believe that he is just going to be with Miro and maybe Matt Dumba. We need more young guys. I feel like last year the Stars got a little old at the end of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So he just keeps that youth core going.
And one of the things you guys both mentioned just now was the veterans, and obviously we lost some of our veterans. Joe Pavelski, obviously, being one of the big ones. He had not a disappointing last season, but didn't perform like we thought he would. Chris Tanev's gone. Radek Fox is gone. Who do you guys see stepping into that leadership role, especially with the youth that is on this Stars team?
Okay, so I know Omar and I have a couple of similar ideas in what players we think. I really think, number one, Ben's the captain, but he is more like mute captain, like I would say. There's a lot of other teams in the NHL that when you think of that team, you immediately think of the captain. And I think with the Stars, it's mostly, they have a veteran seniority when it comes to role models. So I really think that Seguin is going to shine. And on top of that, Duchesne, I think he's going to be a great asset, and he just has that experience, and he will be a good mentor for the youth coming in. I think it would be very intimidating for the kids coming into the NHL and just seeing their role models and not having someone that they can feel related to and something in common. So I think it's going to be good. Obviously, Bell, they're going to rally on him. It's probably one of his last seasons, and he's a great captain. So I think it's going to be a good seniority and youth mix in there.
Yeah,
What
I
about
agree.
you, Omar?
Yeah, I agree. I believe Wyatt Johnson's going to be very important. I feel like he was living with Joe Pavelski for 2 years. I feel like it's very important for him to be able to lead the guys like Logan Stankoven, Liam Bichelle, Maverick Bork. I feel like those guys will lean on Wyatt a little bit. So I know he's still very young, but he can have all that experience. Yeah.
Right.
He's going to have all that experience from Joe Pavelski that I feel like it'll really propel them to grow in the NHL very quickly.
And one of the players that I was thinking when I was prepping this question was Mason Marchment. If you asked me at the beginning of the season last year, I wouldn't have said that at all. But looking at how he did in the Stanley Cup playoffs, bringing the physicality alongside Chris Tanev, I think I could see him getting into that leadership role. What do you think, Omar?
Yeah, Mason Marchment, he's still pretty young as well, and he's just going to add on to that that dynamic. He's big, he's physical, and I feel like he can just set a tone for the Stars.
I think it's going to be really good, especially, we have older veterans in the team, and it's going to be really good to have Marchment, who, number one, is good with the media. He's a great player. He's been there as a team leader, and I think all of the youth we're having coming in, and especially a lot of prospects that we're seeing, especially this season, it's going to be a good way to, motivate those people to do their best and also get them an opening into a possibility of an assistant position or something like that in the captainship,
And in terms of the youth, one of the players that I'm most excited to watch again this season, Logan Stankoven. How do you guys think he's going to do this season? Because I think he's just going to be a ball of energy on the ice, and he'll help out in ways that we don't really know we necessarily need.
Omar, you love Stankoven. I know you do.
Yes, I do. Logan Stankoven is so young. He's so fast.
He's so
and,
tall.
I mean, last year's in Stanley Cup playoffs, he showed physicality, even with him being a little small and, you know, very young. He showed speed and physicality. And I remember it was versus Vegas. He got hit, and Ben hit someone right back, that same player. And so for that, I feel like Stankoven just sets a tone as well. He's got the speed and physicality, and also he can move. He can stay.
Yeah. I think one of the big things that Stankoven has on top of like how he moves and his agility with everything, we are seeing faces that are also keeping up to speed with him and making the game so entertaining because they're just up to par in everything, and that's what we needed. You know, we keep going back to the veterans of the team, but they're very tactical, they're very like strategic, and they have like the plays in their head. But these younger players are bringing hockey like in an interesting way, and you're seeing them all follow each other like a team. And like, let's look at Liam Bishop. Like, he's a young 6'6", 20-year-old prospect, and he went against two defensemen, wrapped it around. Like, it was an amazing play. And I think him and Stankoven together, and the rest of the youth is going to be a really good and keeping interesting the Stars this year.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and going into the preseason, the Dallas Stars played against the St. Louis Blues on Friday to open up their year. They got the win 2-1. Are there any? Because obviously in those preseason games, they want to see like the youth on their roster. Are there any young guys that shined out to you, Omar?
I would say Liam Bishop. That was probably my favorite. He was the one that stood out the most, and so hopefully tonight, when they play the Abs, we see someone else shine, and so we'll see. If someone wants to make the roster, they need to show up tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, on top of Liam Bishop, I completely agree with Omar. I think DeSmith, he's our backup goalie. He just came from the Canucks. He didn't have the best stats at the Canucks, but he's been doing really great. He's been showing up at training camp. He's been there an hour before, training with the goalie, coach and everything. Nobody has been able to score in him in practice and the matches. And so he played one period of it, but he did really good, and I think he's going to be a really good asset as our backup goalie. So I think that he's one of the players that's shown out to me.
Right, and speaking of our goalies, obviously Ottinger, he's going to start, but in terms of backup, you bring in Magnus Hellberg and then Casey DeSmith. Is DeSmith, that number 2 goalie? Do you think he'll fill the shoes for Wedgwood?
I think definitely. He's getting up there. I think he had a point 830 back at the Canucks as a score, a percentage. But I think he's showing what he's meant to do. He's a good backup. He's there, and he needs to show when he needs to, and he'll do it. So I'm excited to see how he works and if he's a good replacement for the team. But I see the potential in him, don't you?
Yeah, I agree. He played really well versus the Blues. He actually shut him out until he got taken out. But I think he's a very good addition for the Stars to replace Wedgwood.
Right, and I feel like for the young guys on the team, this Colorado Avalanche game tonight, yes, it's preseason, but like I was telling you guys earlier, I don't think the Stars are necessarily focusing on the win. There's so much fight in the roster of who could move up to the Stars official roster. You've got Maverick Burke, Christian Kyrou, Tristan Bertucci. Who do you guys expect to see show up tonight against the Avalanche?
Well, Omar and I were talking earlier about this, and we were saying, you get invited to training camp, not because your position is set. You have to be there because they see the potential in you, and you have to show up. So we're talking about tonight's game is not about we win or we lose. It's about to see who's going to make it in the roster. We have a lot of competition, a lot of young players that are coming up. Some of them might stay at the NHL. Maybe, Maverick Burke will have his rookie season. Maybe Liam Bishop will stay in the AHL the rest of the season. But this is a game to see who is here to stay and who is here to, keep practicing and maybe coming back in the future.
Yeah, I agree. And tonight is just, another preseason game, but it's also the Colorado Avalanche, a team that's made the playoffs and has been good for a while. So they have some really good prospects as well. And like I said earlier, I feel like if the Stars prospects want to make this roster, they need to show out tonight. On the road, hostile environment. Like you said, it's the preseason, but for guys that are trying to make it to the NHL or AHL, it's tonight that you can make that happen.
Right. As Omar mentioned, the game is tonight at 8 p.m., so be sure to tune into that game. And then when we come back, we'll talk NFL and concussion protocols.
There's no harm in wanting to have fun while in college, but it's easy to lose track of how much you've had. Apps like Drink Control and Alkadroid can help keep track of your consumption and blood alcohol levels. If you or someone else does drink too much, the signs of alcohol poisoning are as follows: pale skin, vomiting, confusion, low body temperatures, irregular breathing, blacking out, and it's hard to wake up or cannot be woken up.
Dude, are you okay? Hey, what's wrong? Wake up.
It's an exciting time of year, but it's important to be responsible. If you suspect someone is suffering from alcohol poisoning, get help immediately. You will not get in trouble for seeking help if you are underage. For more info and resources, go to UNT's Division of Student Affairs.
What's wrong? Are you stuck in your paper?
Pretty much. I haven't written anything in like an hour.
Why don't you check out the Writing Center at UNT?
Well, how do I meet up with them?
All you have to do to make an appointment is visit the Writing Center's website and either call the number or email writingcenter@unt.edu. The appointment is 30 minutes long, and the trained tutors will be able to help with brainstorming, correcting grammar, ensuring clarity, and a wide range of services. They also do walk-in appointments.
That sounds awesome. I'm gonna check them out.
So, when's this paper due?
30 minutes?
For more information, visit the UNT Writing Center's website.
Yeah, it's 6 pages.
Good evening, welcome back to Sportszone. I'm your host, Mackenzie Freeman, and we're going to be talking about concussion protocols in the NFL, and here to talk about that with me is Jose Moreno and Isaiah Ortiz. Guys, one of the reasons this topic is so huge is because Tua and his injury, most recent, he's had 3 concussions in 5 years, with 2 of those resulting in the fencing pose. You know, he hasn't confirmed whether or not he's going to stay in the league or, retire. What do you guys think he should do?
Retire. I honestly, I'm a pro wrestling fan. I'm a boxing fan. I'm also a fan of many sports where you get hit in your head. And I see people like Chris Benoit, Christopher Nowinski. They had 2 very different careers after their concussions, but Chris Benoit ended up killing his whole family. And Chris Nowinski later on went to denounce any contact sport because, well, concussions are life-changing. It's something that even if you get one, it can change the way you even talk, the way you go about your day every day. Here's a story I was telling Isaiah and a couple of friends in the lobby earlier, is that I had a buddy who played football in high school all 4 years. He was a really good D lineman, and unfortunately he got a lot of concussions, and he had underlying symptoms of schizophrenia, and the concussions basically accelerated his schizophrenia way faster than it should have, and now he lives in Indonesia with a wife, and he has fully converted to Islam. And I know that's not a super crazy story, but before that, he was in the psych ward, and he now has schizophrenia. And that's a big issue with concussions that no one thinks about. Yeah, it's just a little bump in the head, but sooner or later, you're going to end up not being able to be the same person you were last week.
Right.
It's a terrifying thing, and Tua's not getting some nasty zingers. He's getting things where he's like that, right? And that's not just attacking the head, right? That's not just a head concussion. That's a spinal concussion. That can lead to a broken neck, a broken spine. That can lead to paralysis and death.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a torn ACL. I don't think this is a punctured lung. This is something super serious, and I don't know if Tua should even stay in the league in any manner, other than just a coaching position. This is a really serious subject in terms of football, man.
Right. And Isaiah, what are your thoughts?
Well, I never want to make any judgments because I'm not a doctor or anything. I don't know the level of seriousness every concussion has been. But obviously, watching the 2 instances where he was kind of in that position with his fingers, don't know the exact name of what it's called, but obviously it looked bad.
Right.
But you got to think about the difference here between his football career and just his career in general. He has a chance to make generational wealth for his family.
Right.
And you always have to take that into account. Yes, you're putting your mind on the line, but you're also trying to set up your family for years to come to where they don't have to worry about anything else for the rest of their lives. So that's always kind of the factor you have to put in there with Tua and his concussions. And even if it is a risk, it's a risk a lot of athletes are willing to take. I think it's always going to be the biggest factor above anything else.
Right, and in terms of the NFL, there's been many cases of CTE Obviously, Aaron Hernandez, a big one. Antonio Brown, also a big one.
O.J. Simpson?
Yeah. Given the research we have on concussions and things like that, do you think there should be like a concussion limit in the NFL?
Actually, you were talking about this earlier, Isaiah.
I was, yeah.
Outside the lobby, if you want to go and talk about that.
Yeah, I did some research on concussion limits throughout like schools, programs, things of that nature. In 1952, a study was done by the New England Journal. It suggested that there should be like a 3 strikes and you're out limit for concussions, and a lot of schools and programs have implemented that with their students. Now, should the NFL do that? I'm not sure, because there are different kind of concussions that you need to grade from, whether it's like mild, moderate, or severe. And again, you're messing with grown men here. It's not kids. So it's different. Like I said, you got to like factor in careers when you're talking about concussions. But I do think that there should be some sort of limit. Like with Tua, these are like 2 severe concussions that are coming off of. He's now on IR. He hasn't had that for any concussion yet. So if you take into account the severity of concussions, that's where I think the limit should come in.
That's why they call him the professor. That's a really great way to put it, Isaiah. I do think that a concussion limit is useful, especially in high school, because you're so young. My friend, especially, I wish he got to use that. His college, not his college, his high school coach kept putting him in, and that's why he got like 8 concussions in 3 years.
Yeah.
I do think that there should be a concussion limit in the NFL, and I do think that if players get a concussion, they should take it a lot more serious. I do agree with you. Like that is that players know that they need to sacrifice things at times. Like, hey, I'm looking at a $200 million contract. I'm not going to let a concussion put me down. But the thing is, what's more important in the long run, money or your life? And I think that Tua can still find a way to make money, not as much as in the NFL, and I agree with that, to still support his family, in analyst work, in coaching work. But I don't know. This is just it's a really sad subject to really talk about, especially about such a young guy. If we're talking about 35-year-old Tua, it's like, oh, just retired, But it's a guy,
like Van Der Esch almost, where Van Der Esch, I mean, his injury wasn't a concussion, but I believe it was something with his neck. And,
It was a problem before he went to the NFL as well.
Right, exactly. So after discussing with his family, he sort of made that decision.
And that's the thing. And we all thought Tua was slowing down on plays like that. We thought that Tua was getting better overall, and like, hey, he's going to start protecting his head. And then we saw on that Sunday that, he ran right into DeMar Hamlin's heart in the most ironic injury in all of NFL history. It's just, I think if you're not going to change the way you're going to play, if you're still getting these issues, why would you want to risk having to change your entire play style and the way you play football just to protect your health? And you can just retire and coach someone to play like you. I don't know. Maybe I'm not an athlete, but that's how I see it. Life is more important than money. Life is more important than a game. You talk about your kids, you talk about your grandkids. I'd rather see my grandkids and kids than give them $200 million.
Well, it's like, I believe it was Pat McAfee or Nick Saban, one of those shows where they're talking to each other, and Nick Saban was talking about how Tua is such a family man. I definitely think that we could see him, discuss things with his family, and this could be his last year. If he's truly the family man that they're saying he is.
I do think the family is an important aspect on that. What do you think, Isaiah?
Yeah, obviously, like I've said, the biggest part about Tua was like the money you're leaving aside, and the fact that a lot of NFL teams are now taking insurance policies with their players. That means like their contracts are going to void, and they don't have to pay them. And Tua just signed a huge contract extension just this past offseason. So obviously, you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you're going to go out with a concussion and early retirement. And it's just such a big factor. I just don't think we can simply ignore it. Yes, the concussions have been an issue, but I think if you take another step, like a guardian cap throughout your career, like we'll talk about, and you mentioned the DeMar Hamlin hit, I think that concussion came from like the whiplash when he went down with the injury on the field. And,
and that's like a back of the head concussion. The worst type of back concussion.
Yeah, I think guardian caps would help prevent future stuff like that.
And I'm glad you mentioned guardian caps, because they've been super controversial topics, but then you have players like Jonathan Taylor, who's been seen wearing them in game. Even if they're not aesthetically pleasing, do you think the NFLPA should make it mandatory that players wear those guardian caps?
No, I don't think
they mandate everything else, though. They mandate down to the socks and shoes people are wearing.
I think to make it mandatory, though, it just takes away like a big aspect of football. And this was crazy. It's like football is a game with injuries. It's kind of what makes like a player lasting 20 years like so incredible. You know, but in all seriousness, I don't think that forcing everyone to wear those Guardian caps is going to have people watching the games and kind of still have that risk factor there. Now, I don't want our players to get concussed, but I think during practice, every player should be wearing one of those Guardian caps. You do not want to get yourself injured in practice. But I think it's more so like how these players are trained and how these players are trained to hit. And a lot of times it goes down to the carelessness of the players, not, the hit itself. Tua should be more careful with his head. He should not be running into DeMar Hamlin. He should not be falling his head back. He should be taking care of that. It's like how Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins, they tore their Achilles last year. You see them kind of they're afraid to use their foot that they basically destroyed because they don't want to mess it up. So they're re-changing their play style to fit that. And I know I mentioned earlier, will Tua really want to do that? Basically because he's been taught one way of playing football. I mean, the guy was forced to be left-handed. You think this guy's going to want to force himself to change the entire way he plays? He's not going to want to go do that, especially at this level, in my eyes. What do you think?
Yeah, I've never really cared about like the aesthetics when it comes to Guardian caps or things like that, but they do already wear Guardian caps for training camp and for preseason and stuff like that. So I just don't understand what the point would be not implementing these Guardian caps if you wear them before the season and then just go into the season and say, screw it, y'all have to wear it anymore.
Yeah, that's kind of counterproductive because, I know people say you practice hard, play harder. That's what these guys do. They're going to be more aggressive in game. So the fact that you require it in practice and then not in games is kind of weird.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, but that's like the same as like forcing, soccer players to, in practice, they wear certain things that protect them, like flak jackets and such as like, and even in like hockey, when they practice, they wear more safety stuff because, again, you don't want to get injured in practice. A game, you get injured, at least you put your life on the line for a win. You get injured in practice, it's like, well, what now? Like, what now? It's like you're not supposed to go super hard in practice, but you're supposed to put all that energy and life into the actual game. That's all I got to say about that.
Right. Thank you guys for joining us here on Sportszone this week. Be sure to tune in this upcoming Thursday at the same time to get some more information, and be sure to follow us on our socials at NTTV_sports, and we'll see you next week right here.